It was a year ago at this time, October of 2011, Gordon Yeager, 94, and his wife Norma at 90, they died exactly 1 hour apart after 72 years of marriage. They were holding hands when they died. You see, what happened is this couple left their home in Marshalltown, Iowa, to run some errands in town, but they never made it. There was a car accident that sent this couple to the emergency room with broken bones and many other injuries. When they were transferred to intensive care, the nurses just knew not to separate them. Even in the hospital, they were more concerned about each other. Their son Dennis said, "She said her chest was hurting, but what's wrong with Dad?" Even laying there like that, she was worried about Dad, and his back was hurting, and he was asking about Mom. Now, when it became clear that their conditions were not improving, the nurses moved them into a room together in beds side by side so they could hold hands. Gordon died at 3:38 p.m. holding hands with his wife as the family that they built stood around the beds. Their son Dennis said this. He said, "It was really strange. They were holding hands and Dad stopped breathing, but I couldn't figure out what was going on because the heart monitor was still going. But we were like, he isn't breathing. How does he still have a heartbeat?" The nurse checked and said that it was because they were holding hands and it's going through them. Her heart was beating through him and picking it up. At 4:38 p.m., exactly 1 hour after Gordon died, Norma passed away too. Their son Dennis said this. He said, "They just loved being together. They were old-fashioned. They believed in marriage till death do us part." But he also added this. He said, "I don't believe there was a big secret to their marriage. There were many times they were mad at each other, many times they didn't like each other, but they chose to work it out. In the end, they chose each other, and that was it. They were committed." There was no big secret to their marriage. There were many times they didn't like each other, they were mad at each other, and they fought, but they worked it out. They didn't allow their hearts to become hardened and destroy the choice they had made. In the end, they chose each other, and that was it. They were committed. Isn't it all about making a choice? And making that choice every single day. Now, after 36 years of witnessing vows and more than 25 years of being a professional marriage counselor, I know how joy-filled and how heart-wrenching marriages can be. It's hard work. It's work that never ends. It takes great patience and the ability not just to forgive, but to forget. And let me be very, very clear in this homily that some marriages will not make it, cannot make it, and the only healthy decision is to separate and to divorce. But today, when in some cases divorce is the first choice rather than hard work, we have a crisis. And I think all of us realize that we live in a time of crisis. Crisis in marriage, crisis in family life, crisis in church, crisis in government, a crisis of values. Now, this weekend, the Catholic Church calls us to Respect Life Weekend. And I believe that all the crises we have basically boil down to having lost that basic sense of respect. Respect for our own selves, respect for each other. And too often we have become hardened in a belief that the only person who matters when we make choices is me. Too many people have lost that sense of the greater good, that sense of absolute values. As long as I get something out of it, I can cheat on my spouse, I can have an abortion, I can spend millions on wars in foreign countries, I can do whatever makes me feel good. When I don't take into consideration the consequences of my actions on others and on society, then I believe all respect is lost. So if we're going to be called together as Catholics this weekend to talk about Respect Life, I believe we really need to get into the deeper issues. And what are those deeper issues? Well, I really believe that we need to take a look at how we are teaching our young people to make right moral choices and help them to understand that the world does not revolve around their needs. Now, there was a wonderful op-ed article in the September Wall Street Journal written by Paul Tough entitled, "Opting Out of the Rug Rat Race." He's just published a book on the New York Times bestseller list called How Children Succeed. And what he does is he focuses on the anxiety of so many parents today trying to get their children into the best preschools, believing that success depends only on cognitive skill, the kind of intelligence that gets measured on IQ tests. But his thesis is that brain power helps us become successful, but we need so much more than that. That it's not just about how much information we can stuff into children's brains, it's how we develop a very different set of qualities. Non-cognitive skills, persistence, self-control, conscientiousness, grit, self-confidence. It's all about personality traits. It's about character. And I want to add, it's about respect. And he makes a very interesting point to parents. He says to parents, you have to allow your children to fail, to fall down, to face adversity on their own, to not always be helped back up. He tells them, don't so overly protect your children, or they will never develop that crucial ability to overcome real setbacks, and in the process, develop strength of character. He goes on to say that too many of our college kids today graduate never really having faced any significant challenges in their lives. They must have the opportunity to struggle, to overcome adversity, because that's what produces character. And character, more than IQ, leads to success. And if we as Catholics want to develop a sense of respect life that underlies our decisions, we need to build up character in our young. Character, not just IQ, leads to making right moral decisions. Dr. Eric Sigman is an internationally known psychologist. He writes about the spoilt generation, and he writes about the rise of the little emperor, telling us that too many children today believe that their parents must earn their respect. And he tells us that empowering children and a lack of discipline in the classroom has fostered rising levels of violence in the home, in schools, in the street, and that parent battering is on the rise. And children are being spoiled in ways that go far beyond materialism. Youngsters' inflated sense of their own self-importance enables them to make demands on their parents. And he even makes a very, very intriguing suggestion. He says that perhaps some children who have been thought to have attention deficit disorder might simply never have been taught to behave. And because of all this, we have the highest rates of child depression, underage pregnancy, and violent antisocial behavior since the records began to be kept. It really is all about choice and teaching our young people how to make good moral choices, not empowering them with the attitude that what's important is what makes me feel good, not empowering them with an overinflated sense of their own personal worth. We need to stop creating little emperors, and we need to move away from the rug rat race. Gordon and Norma were married for 72 years. Now that is quite a feat in our very secular society today. It's an astounding and amazing accomplishment. And their son tells us that they had their problems, that there were times they didn't like each other, they fought, they got mad at each other, but they had character. They had the character to be able to work their problems out, and they respected one another. They were concerned about each other, and they faced adversity together. Facing adversity creates character. Character creates respect. Respect for all life, from the very beginning to the very end, and all of those challenges in between.